Could you explain why Jesus would say the violent sentence in Luke 19:27? Okay, let's have a look. Luke 19:27. Okay, so, but as for those enemies of mine who did not want me to be their king, bring them here and slaughter them here in front of me. Well, the thing is, bro, I don't know if, I don't know what your particular perspective is, private. This is the kind, it comes from, I've certainly heard this question from the Islamic Dawah script, and I'll answer it as if it is the Islamic Dawah script, though I'm not assuming that you're a Muslim or anything. But essentially, if you actually take the time to read Luke chapter 19 and to read like Luke chapter 19 in context, from verse 11 to verse 27, the Christ is telling a parable. He's telling a parable that speaks about him. So here's the parable. While the people were listening to these things, Jesus proceeded to tell a parable because he was near to Jerusalem, and because they thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear immediately. Therefore he said, a nobleman went to a distant country to receive for himself a kingdom and then return. And he summoned 10 of his slaves, gave them 10 minas, and said to them, do business with these until I come back. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, we do not want this man to be king over us. When he returned after receiving the kingdom, he summoned these slaves to whom he had given the money. He wanted to know how much they had earned by trading. So the first one came before him and said, sir, your mina has made 10 minas more. And the king said, well done, good slave, because you have been faithful in a very small matter, you will have authority over 10 cities. Then the second one came and said, sir, your mina has made 5 minas. So the king said to him, and you are to be over 5 cities. Then another slave came and said, sir, here is your mina that I put away for safekeeping in a piece of cloth. For I was afraid that you, because you are a severe man, you withdraw what you did not deposit, and you reap what you did not sow. The king said to him, I will judge you by your own words, you wicked slave. So you knew, did you, that hold on, I've just moved the page down, so I've lost where I was reading. Let's go back, sorry, bear with me. So you knew, did you, that I was a severe man, withdrawing what I didn't deposit and reaping what I didn't sow? Why then didn't you put my money in the bank so that when I return, I could have collected it with interest? And he said to his attendants, take the mina from him and give it to the one who has 10. But they said to him, sir, he has 10 minas already. I tell you that everyone who has will be given more, but from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. But as for these enemies of mine who did not want me to be their king, bring them here and slaughter them in front of me. So Christ is telling a parable, and the parable, private, is that it's a parable about Christ, the church, and the world. As Christians, we have been given talents to use in this world, and we must use them for the good of the kingdom. We must use them in the service of the king. And where we do follow our vocation and where we do utilize our skills and talents for the benefit of the church and the good of the kingdom, in the service of the king, we're going to be rewarded for our good works. The scriptures are very clear that people are rewarded according to their works. But any good works can only be credited to you if you have accepted Christ, because it's not your works that save you. Your works on their own are not sufficient. But once you are saved by Christ, you can build on that salvation. You can beautify that salvation. You can cultivate what that salvation means in your life. And as you do that, you build righteousness into your soul, that when it appears before the presence of God and is tested in fire, it will be rewarded. And there will be a reward for our good work. So this is the thing about our talents and using our talents to create increase for the church in terms of its discipleship, in terms of its status, in terms of its position, in terms of its politics and economics and society, and evangelism. But those Christians who don't use their talents, they are going to suffer a loss when they come before the testing and fire, as it were. Their failure to work, to use their talents, to do that which is good, which is rooted in fear, will be to their detriment. They will still be saved, but they will be saved as if won through fire, having suffered a loss. But then what happens to people like yourself, Private? I'm going to assume now, for the sake of this answer, that you're not a Christian. What happens to people like you when Christ, who is your rightful Lord, returns and he finds you still a rebel, denying his kingship? You are going to go to the judgment. You will go to the judgment because no matter how good your works have been, you might have lived the life that would have made you a saint had you been a Christian. But because you have lived that life in rebellion to Christ, you will go to the judgment. And thus, this is this line about, slaughter them in front of me. Let's just see what if we can get any more elucidation from the scholars. Let's just have a look. Yeah, so the bit that's translated as king could be translated to rule over them, because that's what it means to be a Christian, is to allow Christ to rule over you. Yeah, it is the term "bring them here and slaughter them in front of me." It's a really strong terminology, and it is definitely talking about slaughtering of people rather than slaughtering of animals. And it's a parable of the judgment. So parables, are not to be taken literally. They are by their very nature. It's not like Christ only has truly 10 servants in the world. So you need to read it in context. And when you read it in context, you see that it is a parable, and the slaughtering in front of the king is a parable of the judgment of those who reject Christ as their king.